Hey guys, what's going on? Another day, another video. As you can tell, it's a little late, but I wanted to still keep working on these daily videos and put one out for you. So I was kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to kind of talk about today, and something was kind of on my mind. I wanted to actually kind of elaborate more on strategy and strategic thinking. And one question that kind of popped up on my brainstorming is different types. Now, in my research, what I discovered, let's move this thing back up so I'm looking at the camera again. What popped up on my research is I'm not quite sure if it's business related research, but it was a question that people search for, and it's what are the four types of strategy? And I was like sitting there and thinking about it, and I wasn't quite sure, but I don't think there's four types of strategy. There might be a little bit more, but so I might need a more context into what that question is relating about. So that's what I was trying to think through. And it got me thinking kind of creatively of like, at first impulse, I was like, four? That's it? Four? But then I was like, there might just be four, but I wasn't sure. So let's figure it out together. Now, again, talking about the basic framework of strategy and strategic thinking, and just getting back to basics again. In a very similar couple days video, I talked about strategy is essentially the kind of the action-oriented, trying to pull together decisions to create goals for yourself, and figuring out based off of like where you are and where you want to be in forward in time. So you think of it like more dynamically in the business sphere, sports, games, socially, politically, in the military. It's in a three-dimensional sphere. It's pretty much that simple. It's just like, where do I stand and where do I want to be? Okay. And so if we're thinking things through three-dimensionally, okay, there's only so many directions you can go. Okay. So when it comes to basic strategic thinking, there's only a couple directions. I mean, there's a lot of different directions, 360 degrees plus the other linear. But when it comes down to simplicity terms, you only have a couple vectors of strategic thinking. And so the first direction you can go is straightforward. And depending on how aggressive you want to move forward, that would be considered a offensive strategy. So what falls into offensive strategy and offensive tactics? In football, that entails running the ball, running trick plays, and throwing the ball. Okay? And trying to outmaneuver the defensive players. Same thing in soccer. They're passing, they're moving, everyone's trying to outmaneuver on the field, and you have people that are the forwards, that are the aggressive offensive players, okay, and then you have defensive players that wait and hold back and are trying to push the field and push the attack and scoring and push the power forward. Okay, so that's forward progression is offensive. Okay, then the direct opposite is reverse. Okay, so we can take up a reverse position, okay, in our tactics. We can actually step back or flee the situation. All these different optionalities of how we can say the word, but they're all the same thing. We see where we are, even though the direction we may want to go is that way. Maybe strategically the best option for us is to step back and pull back first and then reassess later. Okay, so you have the opposing pullback, reversing opposition. Okay, so again, if this is objects in motion, you have two polar opposites. One's going this way and one's going that way, or that way would be a better metaphor. Okay, so boom, forward, reverse. Okay, what are the other vectors, right? You can go left and right, right? So you can step to the sides or flank, okay? And so in military terms, this would be a flanking strategy, okay? So instead of going straight forward, being aggressive, trying to break through very, very rigid and hard defenses, we may feel that there's a weakness on another angle on the field based off of a firing position or a strategic line that has been set up on the battlefield. Okay, so we may think to move instead of pulling back. We might think to move to the side. Okay, this was popular in use of tactics in the earlier militias and earlier armies, and when we were still fighting with swords and shields and stuff like that, and on smaller battlefields with less lethal weapons. Okay, when it was still in our hands and stuff like that, and we had to set up lines, offensive lines and defensive lines, and where if you had a large enough army, you could flank around someone's fighting position and completely encapsulate them. Okay, so that's a flanking offensive strategy. And strategies can incorporate both. Okay, so that's the three. Then you have the stay put, right? I want to go forward. That's my goal. But at this time, it doesn't make sense to me. Okay, so you have a stay still and wait, right? Or you can set up a defensive strategy, which defensive strategy kind of is the play for pulling back your attacking forces and pulling them up to support your fortification line, your primary reserves. In this case, if you're on a medieval castle, you may want to pull your fighting forces off the main battlefield and pull them to support the walls and the defenses and try to hold off and wait. Okay. And this is where militias and armies would try to oppose each other. One would set up a very, very strong defensive strategy in a fortification. Another one would have to breach walls, climb walls, or just siege there and hope they, survive. They out-starved of them of any reserves of food or something like that. And so it's quite aggressive way of battling things. But yeah, that could be siege tactics was a way of fighting against people that had set up heavy defensive tactics. So there's that movement. And obviously there's up and down too. Those are also flanking maneuvers set up in different domains. Like if you're on an earth flat plain fighting on a land base attack, right? You can get flanked from underground. You can get flanked from the sky through air forces and stuff like that. So to use military tactics and stuff, those are all the different avenues. So flanking, defensive, offensive, and you can have a pullback in various strategies. Now, how is this applicable to life and business? Oftentimes, our same strategies incorporate the same thing. Okay, so when you're trying to think about your finances, oftentimes you have the same types of strategies in place. So if you're broke and you don't have any money, you can go out on the offensive and make more sales and try to find more revenue for your household. Or you can save your money. Okay, that is a defensive strategy. Okay, save reserves for your defense. Okay, so make a bunch of money, but save a little bit at a time. So you can run multiple strategies at the same time. None of these are fixed. They're just movements, directions we can choose, right? And if we're on a compass, we don't have to go straight. We can go at an angle. Okay, so a little this way, a little this way, and a little this way at the same time. So you can put a small amount for your defensive strategy while pushing offensively at the same time. Okay, so you can choose multiple approaches at the same time. There's defensive strategies for talking to people. There's flanking strategies to talk to people. This is where lying and cheating comes into play. If you're talking to your boss and you want to have your way, you can go in the direct opposition. You can go for an aggressive attack on them. So all these strategies have the same, they morph into other things. So offense, defense, flank, reverse. Pretty simple. That's how I simply kind of break it down. And I just, as things get more dynamic in the tactics you want to utilize, try to figure out which of those tactics fall into those areas. And they typically do. They usually, if you break it down and think about it in simple terms, it's usually offense, defense, flank, and reverse strategies. When you sit back and wait, that's another strategy where you're in defense, where you're not, if you see something you need to make a decision on, but you just go think, you're like, let's wait this out, see what they're gonna do. Like if you have an opponent, we're gonna sit here and wait to see what they do. That's kind of a defensive mindset, waiting to utilize their force on them. And these are different things I used to think about when I was in sports and wrestling and stuff like that. A good wrestler would be able to think about their own opponent and the way they were moving and try to trip them up. So sometimes you'd want to go aggressive and hard. Sometimes you want to try to do a trick move and utilize their force. My bread and butter was try to just go low ankle sweeps and stuff and essentially sweep and kick up all their inertia. I understood that people are top heavy when they're standing. And if you can go to a low ankle, you can flank them. And with very, very little ease and very little small amount of pressure, that people come straight falling down, no matter how big they are. And so that was my kind of sneaky flanking strategy, is if I would try to grab people on their stiff and heavy footedness and flank them. And so because I was such a little kid and small in stature, I realized that, one, if I hunker down and take a defensive strategy, I'll get crushed on the wrestling mat. They'll just outweigh me and just pin me down and wear me out, and just couldn't do it. Offensively, I wasn't strong enough to penetrate into their forces. So I learned to leverage flanking positions and flanking tactics a lot in my wrestling techniques. And so that was I had to do a lot of trick plays and stuff like that and things like that. Same thing when it was coming down to like on the soccer field as well. as a midfielder. I wasn't the fastest. I wasn't the strongest, like defensive mover, but I can see a play develop, and I could get into position and position the ball to be pushed up forward real quick and easy. And that all helped play into understanding tactics and stuff like that. So I hope this was valuable for you guys, and I hope you guys continue to listen and watch. More topics and discussions to come at later days. I hope to get more into strategy and tactics and other things that I'm interested in. I hope you got some value out of this. Please like, subscribe, and follow, and I will catch with you guys later, hopefully during the day and not in the nighttime.